Welcome to the Diane McClay Show, empowering life through choice. Get ready to discover new perspectives, motivation, and balance through Diane's compassionate storytelling and insightful discussions. Whether you're feeling stuck and discouraged or curious and looking for more possibilities, Diane has your back, and she's ready to take you on a journey of self-discovery and expansion. Choice is powerful, and so are you. The Diane McClay Show starts now.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Diane McClay Show. It's been a year practically since we started this, and I'm so amazed at how many new guests we have, how many new perspectives we get to look at, and we're always here to help you empower your life and engage your choice. My guest today is Fattaahi. Hopefully I said that right, because I'm a little nervous about saying people's names. So Fereshteh is, she basically partners with professional advisors to help them tell their story online and build deeper relationships and create steady, predictable outcomes around their marketing and business development efforts. She's a powerful professional interferer in her field. And the amazing thing is that we're going to tie in some of her personal loves and passions into the concepts of choice and methodology today. She's a power lifter, loves listening to music, traveling, and she won't turn down a good cup of espresso. Fresh, welcome in today to do the show.
Thank you very much. I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And it's funny because I feel like I've known you forever. Right? We've really just met a couple of weeks ago in a positive intelligence class that you and I are both taking, and we're learning about how to shift our mind and our perspective from the judge and the saboteur who typically take over our life to the sage. So real quick, tell us a little bit about you. I know you've had some pretty big shifts in your life working in the music industry in LA, and now working in financial services and also working for yourself. So give us a brief stepping stone of how you got to here, and then let's dive into how choice is impacting your life today.
Oh, sure. It's funny, I forget even, I worked in entertainment in LA for a little while, but I kind of forget that that's part of my identity because it's really just part of the timeline at this point. But I did have a really cool 6.5 year stint of spending time working for Sony Pictures, Universal Music Group, and Capitol Records, and met awesome people, had awesome experiences, and wanted to get back to roots of making an impact on daily people. And so I'm thankful to have my own business now and work with a lot of different types of people and interact with people all over the world. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And who are you serving today? Just to give our listeners an idea of who
sure.
you are. We've had coaches, healers, spiritual guiders on the show before, but who is your audience and who are you serving today?
Absolutely. I work mostly with trusted advisors. So those are professional service providers in the financial services, insurance, estate planning field, and then also coaches who serve those people.
Okay, great. And one of your specialties is actually connecting the dots from the current idea of how people want to have their financial world look to, and also to future consumer needs, right? That's kind of your niche, is being able to see the dots, connect them, and then communicate that to your client base. Is that correct?
I'm kind of the liaison for advisors. So I like to make sure that they're seeing everything that's available out there and that they're able to connect with their clients in a deeper way, maybe even more broad than they thought was possible. So there's a lot of discovery that happens, a lot of questions that are asked, and not a lot of solutions provided until we really pull the gist of what we're trying to accomplish out of the person that I'm speaking with.
Well, you're throwing some terms out there that I just feel like I'll automatically feel like you and I have already been talking the same language for years and years and years. And the first one is discovery. And I heard you say that you want to put a lot of solutions on the table, which translates in my world to a lot of options, which then leads to kind of this concept that we're talking about today of choice. So I titled the show, Choose Yourself Before You Lose Yourself. Speak a little bit about without going into detail, speak a little bit about what does it mean for you today, and as you were building your business, about what it means to be putting yourself first as a middle-aged, intelligent, independent woman. What are the things you are learning about choosing yourself first and how you're applying that to your business world. Can you speak to that a little bit?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it's tied up to our own identity. And some of that is, what do we hear from society about what we're supposed to look like versus what do we actually look like on the inside, the nitty gritty that nobody else sees. So I think personal identity, which is something that transforms over time. Obviously, we evolve, our environments evolve, but how do we take control over that so we're making daily active, present, and conscious choices versus just reacting to everything that's thrown to us? And I think a lot of us can see that in the workplace, where things get busy and we end up in reaction mode versus the creative planning mode. And granted, each industry is a little different, but I think that we all have that choice to slow down. If we slow down, we're forcing that intentional thought process and feeling process versus just going from one thing directly to the next. No downtime.
And I want to repeat that: active, present, conscious choice. I want to let that sink in for a minute. Active, present, conscious choice. For our listening audience, just breathe that in for a minute. Like, feel how that feels different than maybe how you just reacted for the first half of your workday, right? So Fresh, in your world, especially working with really busy finances and lots of different people with lots of different expectations, how do you help other people activate this present consciousness when they are making choice and when they are trying to think about themselves?
I think naturally, a lot of times we'll shift directly into business. We'll get on a Zoom call. We'll say, all right, these are all of the agenda items. We need to run through all of this, and we need to make sure we get it all done. Sometimes it's actually reducing that agenda and taking some time at the beginning to check in with everyone. See how people are reacting to what's currently going on. See what ideas people have. If you make people feel important and like they're actually listened to, they're actually going to be a lot more involved and engaged in your meeting. And I'm not saying turn the whole thing into a let's get all warm and mushy and gushy in our meeting when we're trying to accomplish something. But that part of the process doesn't take a whole lot more time. I did it on a meeting this morning, and it was awesome because I ended up learning a lot more about my potential client than I would have if we would have just talked about what the meeting was supposed to be about.
So I see 4 steps there. I want to call this out to our audience. Slow down, reduce the agenda, check in, and ask questions. Did I miss anything?
That sounds good to me.
Right. So why do you think that's important? How does that change our state of mind or state of being, either as a leader, a woman in business, an independent entrepreneur? How does that slowing down and checking in, either with ourselves or our clients, how does that promote positive intelligence or positive choice?
Have you ever slowed down and taken some deep belly breaths right before something really important or really nerve-wracking?
Like before you do a radio show?
Yes, exactly. But take those breaths where you put your hand on your belly and you count for your breaths in, or you do the box breathing that we talked about earlier this week. Have you noticed that your brain works so much better because you're actually allowing it to get oxygen versus the short chest breaths where you just can't seem to get past your thoughts?
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just sort of thinking, like, I don't know that I did that before we jumped on the air. And if I had, I probably would have been a little calmer in your introduction, but I was a little concerned and nervous about not representing you well and not saying your name the right way. I don't know that I actually remembered to breathe, which I normally do before my show. So A, it's a good reminder. And 2, it's so simple to do. And it's so simple to screw it up when you don't do it.
Yeah, I think part of that too is building in those buffers right before your meeting. Even planning Zooms for me, I know a lot of us are working in a hybrid environment where you're either at home working or you're in the office part-time, not full-time. But building in that buffer so you don't have the back-to-back meetings or Zooms all day long. You build in that buffer so you can take the few breaths before the meeting. And Diane, I'm glad that you had me jump on a few minutes before our actual recording today, so that I could do those belly breaths, even if you can't see it on the screen. I mean, it doesn't have to be right before, but it could be during. it just helps us organize our thoughts and think and breathe and feel a little more deeply into being engaged.
Absolutely. And let's kind of jump to choice a little bit, because this is where you and I kind of bonded over what you're doing in your financial world and what I'm doing in my coaching business and what we're doing in this positive intelligence class together. Let's talk a little bit about, why decision making can be difficult for women in business. And what are some of the traps that we fall into as professional women who may feel like we have to give everything to everybody else? Let's talk about the traps that we fall into where we may not feel confident enough to make our own decisions, and then flip it to what can we do to help ourselves out of those traps.
I think that we get trapped in the saying yes mode. We like to make people happy. And I think what we forget a lot of times is the fact that if we're saying yes to each opportunity that comes along, we're having to say no to other ones. So if we're saying yes, 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 well, what if something that was actually a better opportunity came along that you don't have any more capacity to say yes to? You just said no, but unintentionally. So I think part of the trick is figuring out really where your priorities are and only saying yes to those things that align with where you're trying to go in any capacity of your life, personal, professional, relationship wise. You can't say yes to everything because eventually there's a no.
Right. And then the no is usually it's usually we're saying no to something that is important to us for our integrity, our responsibility, our personal self-love, self-care. How does that translate in the personal world? Like it translates in the business world very clearly, but how does that translate in the business world in relationships that we have, friends, family, spouses, neighbors?
Well, that's a really good question too. I think if we're not taking care of ourselves, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but it's really hard to take care of other people and be our best person. Even thinking through an example today, I had a lot of Zoom calls lined up pretty close to each other, and I had a 15-minute break. And either I could spend that time responding to a few emails and catching up, or I could go and heat up some food. And I realized I have to go and eat lunch. I think sometimes even our Zoom marathons, we end up pushing those things because we're like, oh, just one more thing, just one more thing. It's not that much more. And that's an internal judge just telling us that we need to get this one more thing done and then we're going to be good enough. Does that answer your question?
It totally does. So what I'm hearing is not just create buffers of time in between our Zoom calls or from one event to the other, but we need to create kind of buffers of space and personal boundary. And on my other show, the shift and the power of perspective, we've had a series of talking about what does setting a boundary look like. And like a no trespassing sign, it's as much about keeping something out, but it's even more about protecting something that's of value. If you think about the way a fence works or a gate or a surveillance system, it's meant to protect something of value. So from my perspective, I think it's about identifying that thing that is of value to you. I need nutritious food in order to think clearly, in order to serve my clients well, in order to come across as being professional and well thought out. If I don't eat, I'm sacrificing something of value that's important to me, which then actually will start to erode the value that I'm trying to put out in all of these other places. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think that I'm really good at figuring out boundaries because I hate scope creep in a project. It drives me nuts. I've gotten really good at setting boundaries on the business side, but do you have any insight on the personal side that you could share with us?
Well, first of all, explain scope creep. So I know what it means, but to our listeners who might not understand that term, what does that mean? Because I can draw a correlation no, it's good. I can draw a correlation after you give me the definition.
So scope creep on the business side would be saying, all right, this is the framework of what we're going to work within for this project. And this is how much it's going to cost. And this is how much time it's going to take. And sometimes the other side doesn't always see what all is going to be involved. And so they'll keep sending requests and requests and requests. And maybe they no longer fall within the timeline, the price, or what's actually supposed to be covered. And usually that's not intentional. Sometimes it is. And it happens over time. So it'll creep up. And so you call that scope creep.
Well, I think that's a good term to actually parallel that to the personal world, right? Scope creep. How many times have we been walking out the door and the phone rings and it's a relative or your mom or somebody that says, hey, I just have this thing, this real quick thing, right? So now that 15 minutes that I plan to drive to get to someplace on time now gets eroded away because I didn't set the boundary and somebody is creeping into this buffer that I thought that I had. But in a personal world and relationships, I have a friend who every time they call me right now I know, okay, they need something, right? They never call me out of the blue to say, how are you? What's going on in your world? I haven't thought of you. I haven't talked to you in a while. I just want to catch up. Every time they call me, there's a request or a favor shortly after the hello, right? Have you experienced that?
Yeah.
Now, that to me, that's an example of scope creep, because what I know is if I say yes to this one thing now, I know they're going to call me again because they expected me to say yes the second and third and 20th time, right? So in the personal world, I think we need to identify what's valuable to us in a personal relationship, in a dating scenario, in a business relationship. And I think we need to, as women, I think we need to be more clear about, hey, this is important to me. This is what I expect out of somebody in order to get it or in order to facilitate a good relationship. And if I'm not getting it, then there's going to be, we're going to have a different conversation, right? Like I need to say to my friend, how come you never call me to check in? Like you only, like I'm allowing it because I haven't told them that it feels weird yet. So I'm allowing that scope creep, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yep, absolutely.
You know, I want to say something real quick. I've coined the phrase reframe Fridays here on Transformation Talk Radio and the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group. Cornelia had a guest on this morning and her name was Christy Metcalf. And she was talking about the corporate creep of the corporate world where scope creep connects to, you know, how much she's being asked to get done in her day. And she keeps saying yes, which ties into what you said. And she said, I had to create my own yes when people around me told me I couldn't say no. Ooh. So she's like, yes, I'm going to take my own time off. Yes, I'm going to put a boundary around myself. Yes, I am going to say no to that. Right. And I thought that was really powerful. And
that is powerful.
You know, and then on the Crooked Climb, we were talking about David George Brooks was there and he said, it's better to do less than you expected than nothing at all. So that ties back into your backing off of the agenda, so to speak, and really being deliberate, conscious, and attentive to what you have in front of you right at the time.
Have you ever noticed that when you don't plan as much in your day and you intentionally create that white space to allow ideas to flow, how much more impactful the ideas that come to you are?
Yes.
It blows my mind.
Right. And I love that you said white space because it's really giving us, like in a newspaper, right? The words and the font and the spacing are important because it conveys the story. But the amount of margin, the amount of distance between one story and another, where the pictures are lined out, that white space is equally, if not as more valuable than the actual message itself. And I love that you just tied that in. On the Dr. Kate's show just before mine, she said she wanted people to think about three things: anything they want to start, anything they want to stop, and anything they want to continue doing, but doing it a little bit different so they could be better at it. And I think that kind of speaks to the creep, like, what do we want to start doing? All right, if I want to start something new, I have to create white space for it. If there's something I want to stop and it's not serving me, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a client, maybe it's a way of doing things in my own, or a habit, then I have to understand what that is. I have to have awareness about it. And then I have to identify the things that I want to keep doing, but maybe I want to improve on. And I think that's really kind of cool how on the Transformation Talk Radio Network, everything kind of just ties together and reinforces each other's message.
That's really cool.
So let's talk a little bit about choice. Again, let's bring it back to how can we take control of choice? What's working for you in your world when you need to make a difficult decision and it feels weird at first? What has you put into place to serve you and help you feel stronger as you move forward in choice?
I overanalyze everything like in life. And I'm not unproud of that, but that's just what I do. So I will analyze every different aspect that could possibly happen. And sometimes it hinders me from making a choice quickly, but I feel pretty confident about it. Yesterday I was listening to the positive intelligence course, and the gentleman who's leading it talks about the fact that you can look at, if your house burns down, you can look at it in two different ways. You probably listened to this one too.
I haven't gotten there yet, so keep going.
Okay. So he talks about, if your house burns down, you should really look at this in two ways. Either you can rebuild the house exactly as it was, or you can rebuild the house. You can take the time away, do the research, and figure out what elements would make your dream home. Do you want to pull in solar power when you rebuild this home? How do you make it into something that you really want? And while the house is being rebuilt, rather than complaining about living in a hotel, think about what are the things that you've been wanting to do that you haven't had the space or the time to do. And he mentioned writing a book. So how likely are you to go and sit down in your house in your normal day-to-day routine and write your book? If you're in a different environment, you now have been given the space and capacity to do that. And I just thought that reframe was really fascinating, because we should be looking at when things that happen to us that we think we have no control over, we may not have control over the thing that actually happened to us, but we do have control over the choice of the outcome.
Absolutely. And over my left and right shoulder, you probably see the words, but for the listeners who can't see my office, I have choice over my right shoulder and I have courage over my left shoulder. And these words are really, really important to me because I agree with you 100%. We don't always get to choose what happens to us. I absolutely believe we have the choice on how we react, how we respond, what we learn, if we choose to teach from it. But above all else, I absolutely believe we get to choose if and how it defines us, right? Think about relationships that have gone awry. Think about jobs that you've walked away from or jobs that you've lost. You can tell one story of, well, I'm the victim, everybody hated me, it didn't work out the way I wanted, I got pushed out to the door. Or you can say, man, I have this opportunity now to reframe and start over. I remember when I left my dream job, I had a friend, I was panicked about, what am I going to do now? And literally my friend just changed the tone of the question. She said, I don't know. What are you going to do now? Right? And so now, instead of looking at it from a victim perspective, where this thing happened to me and I don't have a choice on how to react, what I realized is this thing happened. I have choice, and I can now move in any direction that I want. And I was this light switch. The reason why choice and courage is so important to me is that was the aha. It was like, this is my choice. I get to choose. I have my power back when I make that choice. Right?
Absolutely. That's a great analogy for, anytime we go through a major shift in our lives, whether it's with a relationship, with a job, with a move, we are reinventing ourselves. So if you go through one of those things, and if it happens to you in a way that you weren't expecting, it's a greater power telling you it's time to figure out, what do you want to do going forward? We're giving you an opportunity.
Right. And asking yourself the question, what is the lesson that I can learn? What is available to me to make me better than who I was yesterday? The book that's over my shoulder is Dreaming Big, Being Bold. It's volume 4, and I had the opportunity to be a contributing author to it. And one of the things I wrote about change when I left my dream job was that I want people to find the courage to navigate their life by choice, not by circumstance. And you and I both know that you won't know where your journey will end when you opt for change, but you absolutely have to trust your heart and your soul and your gut when you know you cannot stay where you are. Do you want to speak to that a little bit about knowing that you can't stay where you are?
Yeah, One of the coaches that I worked with, she used the term ambivalence, and she said, you really cannot live in an ambivalent state, meaning like a not making a decision state. Because the longer that you do that, the more you are going to feel uncomfortable actually making a choice that will improve your life. And I thought that was really powerful. And then I've seen it happen in real life. And I look back at that ambivalent stage and how long it was. And I was reaching out for resources and trying to get help making a decision. And I told her, I said, I wish there was just a guide that would tell me what to do next. And she goes, there is. You just need to listen to it. It's inside of you already.
Well, and let's speak to that real quick. I believe that if we can get rid of bad choice and good choice, right or wrong, and we can just accept that we're making a choice, I feel like our power is going to go up, because when we're just making a choice, there's no judge, right? As soon as you make a choice, you're going to have more information that's going to inform you of whether it feels good or is in alignment with you, or whether it isn't. So, Fresh, we've got to keep having this conversation, right? We have to keep this concept of choice in the forefront of people's minds. But we're also running out of time today. So I want to make sure that people know how to connect with you. You're on LinkedIn, and I love this, Fresh Perspective. So if you want a fresh perspective and you want to connect with us about choice, how can they find you?
LinkedIn's a great spot to find me. Make sure that you let me know that you're listening to the radio show so that I can pick back up the conversation. And I love to connect with good people on LinkedIn. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
So to find you, it's linkedin.com/fresh perspective to find Fresh. And then your website is advisorroots.com. That's where people can find you if they want to talk to you about becoming a client or getting more informed with more connecting the dots about their financial situation, whether they're serving clients or they are one. And then they can email you also, right?
Absolutely. And
okay.
It's F as in friend, ERESHTEH at advisor, ADVISOR, roots, ROOTS.com.
Perfect. And I'll give you the last word. Like, what do you want people to walk away from this conversation with today?
Slow down and make time for yourself. Don't react, create.
Let that sink in. Slow down and make time for yourself. Don't react. Move into the creation. I'm Diane McClay. Fresh, thank you for being with me today. Will you come back?
I'd love to. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, this is the Diane McClay Show, and as always, we are here to empower your life and engage your choice. If you want to reach out with us, DianeMcClay.com. Watch for the Cornelia Stephanie Media app on Google Play, because we are actually launching on October 18th. And that's where you can find all of the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group specialists. We'll give you more details when the 18th rolls around. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for making the choice to be with us. Fresh, be well, take care of yourself, and we'll catch up with you another time.
Thank you.